Hey, this is take two of this because I set myself right in front of our front door, which wasn't the most genius idea on my part. You know, one of many non-genius ideas I've had.
We all make mistakes. No.
Kind of sad, really. But so we just had Easter Sunday. We talked about living out of the resurrection, and we had micro church gatherings in which we tried to discuss how to do that. So you kind of missed yours, right? You didn't. You were
Yeah.
in the
I got it rolling and then passed off the questions to somebody and made them the host, and then drove home. I figured I probably shouldn't drive and Zoom at the same time.
Yeah, that's almost kind of cute. Driving Zoom. Yeah,
Zoom.
yeah, Mazda.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Anyway, but you were encouraging us, of course, to examine how we actually believe in the resurrection and live out of it. I mean, the sermon's online, by the way, if people want to go listen to that. But yeah, in our micro church, we were talking about some of the questions afterward, and it was kind of a tough thing to apply. And it dawned on me I mean, this is really just the Christian life. Living out of the resurrection is the Christian life. And even for myself, I mean, it's not something I go around thinking, like how do I live out of the reality of the resurrection? And I know you were preaching on that, so let's unpack that a little bit more for folks. What does that possibly look like?
Yeah. So I tend to, in general, dislike Christian phrases.
Right.
And so the idea of living out of the resurrection to me is very, very vague. And so I wanted to lock in, like, what does this actually practically mean? How does it affect what you believe? How does it affect your fears? How does it affect your hopes, your dreams, the joy in your life? Like the fact that Christ didn't die. Well, he did die. Let me try that again. That's called heresy. The fact that he didn't stay dead, and resurrected, defeated death, defeated sin. And my day in and day out, what does that mean for me? And so when I was going through the passage that we were working on, that was John 16, there's this little section where Jesus is talking to his disciples, and really, I think what struck me about it was the very, very practical, like just the practicalness of how Jesus talks to his disciples. And he talks about, like, my resurrection gives you peace in the middle of turmoil, in the middle of tribulation, which is very, like, that's perfect for right now, because there will be people who have the tendency to just get real scared and go real dark real fast. Christ conquers death. Like, I don't have to fear death. Matter of fact, that's not super concerning at all. I think the thing that we should be afraid of is, like, I don't want to die not loving Jesus. That's a thing that we should definitely be thinking about. So he brings up peace. He brings up love. The fact that you are loved. The resurrection proves that. Like, that's huge. That God dies for you. That should alter your mind, your life. And then, what do you believe? And so the love is really hinged on belief. And so what do you, in your day in and day out, what do you believe you exist for? What do you believe controls everything? What do you believe about yourself? What do you believe about the Christian community or the world at large? And so anyway, I really, like, I stuck into that passage because I just saw Jesus getting real practical with his people. And,
Yeah.
and I don't know, I think a lot of the things that he says in general are a lot less celestial and more earthy than we think.
Yeah.
I don't think I answered your question at all.
Yeah, no, but that's normal. That's Yeah, in our micro church gathering, one of the things that came up that I put on the table for myself was that um, I've been getting really irritable at home, basically, and just the quarantine thing. I think being kind of stuck in the house with the same people and our little dogs that are super cute till they bark at every stinking thing they think is coming in the door. And yeah, I mean, I brought that up and I was like, what does this mean? I mean, I hadn't quite processed it all yet. I just was kind of putting it on the table. I think we need to ask that question, what do the issues in our lives point to? What's my idol behind this? And I think for me, I was thinking it through, and I really like to be able to kind of control my circumstances. And if I want some peace and quiet, I want to be able to have some peace and quiet. And that that whole scenario seems kind of messed up for me right now, that I might want to sit down and read a book, and actually the dogs are going to go crazy because I can't go read a book at a coffee shop like I'd prefer to do. And I'm going to have to maybe answer a question for Abby's homework, because I'm her only option if Michaela's at work. And it's just, yeah, it's different. And that desire to kind of create my own reality that works for me. I'm not saying it's totally ridiculous. I think it's okay to feel the ups and downs of that stuff, but why is it getting me like bothered as much? And I was kind of processing that out with the group, and basically, saying if Jesus really rose from the dead and defeated death, and all of life is leading to a kingdom that cannot be shaken, and where everything is made new and made right because of Jesus. If that's the case, it calls into question why I am so worried about little stinking things today. And so it does have bearing, and it's not always easy to make that connection, but when you work it through, it does. It really does matter, and it has effects. And so in our group, we kind of process through some of that stuff. But I guess for you, putting you on the spot as the preacher from Sunday, but yeah, how do we go forward from here? We've had an Easter service where we talked about the resurrection. We've invited people to ask that question. What do we do? What do we do this week? Why don't we unpack that a little bit?
Yeah, I think for me, there's a few things. Being at home as much as I have been is super abnormal, right? I'm sure everybody's experiencing that right now. Well, most people are. And so, yeah, it's hard for me to find any quiet time with two kids and two dogs. So that can get stressful. But what I have noticed is when I'm trying to do something and I'm like let's say I'm cooking or something, and then all of a sudden the kids are all over me. And I've got, like, today is a perfect example. I made spaghetti, super difficult meal, and but I have to have. I'm a glutard, so I can't have normal spaghetti noodles, which means I have to boil two separate pots of noodles, and I'm making the sauce, and so I've got 3 boiling pots on the stove, and Clara is like trying to crawl up me, and oh, go ahead.
Sounds like a metaphor for your life.
Yeah, this is it. Disaster. So I'm like super worried that, she's gonna grab a pot, knock it over, and pour boiling water all over the place. And so, like, that always stresses me out. And I can feel myself, like, when I'm in the kitchen and I'm making something and Clara comes in, she wants to be around, like, my stress level is like 90 notches. And I don't know necessarily if that's, like, part of it is worry for her, and then part of it is you are severely annoying me. Like, you're cute, you're squishy, and you're very annoying right now. And I wonder how much Jesus thought that about the disciples. Not the cute and squishy part, but just like, He's like, God, this is frustrating me right now, these disciples. Um, and so being the fact that he endured that with the goal of dying and resurrecting to prove his love to them, that should calm me down. Um, but I think the biggest thing that the resurrection for me means is I cannot be nearly as productive right now. I just cannot. I'm not. My productivity has dropped significantly. Um, and that is definitely an idol in my life, like getting things done, like starting a business, and we're going to do this big thing over here and that other thing, and it's all going to be easy. It's never easy. Um, but the resurrection speaks to me and says, man, it's already done. It's already finished. You don't have to prove yourself through what you're doing. You don't have to accomplish all these goals. Like, it is finished. My identity is in Christ, not in producing things. That means I'm fully loved as I am, whether I do a ton of stuff or nothing at all. So for me, really pressing into that and saying like, okay, I know I'm not going to be able to work and get as much done as I would like, but I need to be okay with laying that idol down a little bit.
Yeah, that was one of my other applications in our microchurch. Was I was saying on the flip side, like there's like something I need to do is like go after that that part of me that wants things to be my way. I need to probably battle that, pray against that, whatever I've got to do. And then the other thing I need to do is not do some stuff, and I need to like let some things go, and I need to as I've been encouraged to do many times, lay down on a couch for no reason, and not accomplish anything or get anything done. Definitely been struggling with that. And to believe in the ultimacy of who Jesus is, that he really was the answer to what God promised in Genesis 3:15, that he really is what the prophets foretold in ancient times, that he really was the hope of Israel, that he fulfilled everything that the tabernacle, ceremonies said we needed as human beings, that if he completed all that, finished that work, crushed Satan underfoot, and is on his way to restoring creation, then for goodness sakes, I could take a nap, right? Like do I really need to do another thing? I mean, so I think some of us struggle with probably laziness, but some of us probably need to say, if he's accomplished all things, I could take Sunday off, or like Saturday too, or something. I mean, that was the other thing I went at with it. And then I'll tell you the other thing I think, so this is kind of where we stayed in our micro church, but I don't know about you, but this is like it feels very surface levelly for me to talk about it this way. Like, oh, the resurrection achieved my ability to not be as grouchy at home, or it feels like really too small sometimes to talk like that. And that's really where we spend our time in our micro church. But one of the things we did on Good Friday is we watched The Passion of the Christ as a family. And then I wanted to follow that with a movie. It was like kind of like a movie night Good Friday thing. But it's like, let's watch The Passion of the Christ, and then let's watch a movie about somebody who believed that Jesus did that on the cross and then lived a life out of that. Mm. And so we watched Entertaining Angels, the story of Dorothy Day, who was a probably communist journalist, not a Christian, had an abortion, was living with her boyfriend, got pregnant again. Somewhere in there starts to engage with faith, and starts to kind of seek God and decides to give herself to God. And she ends up having to make a choice between the father of her child, who he will not have anything to do with her faith, or she pursues this crucified Christ, and she chooses Jesus, and ends up sacrificing her life in many ways for the poor. I mean, sometimes to her own detriment, but we watched that because I wanted to kind of beg the question, and we talked about it afterwards, like, how could this fact that Jesus suffered so much to love us and to care for us, how could it radically change our lives, right? So on the one hand, and this is what I was thinking, I was kind of unpacking this and maybe processing this with my microchurch was, can we do what Dorothy Day did or any missionary has done if we can't even lay down on the couch and take a break? And if we can't even be patient with our kids, maybe the little things aren't insignificant. They're what prepare us to do more.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think? This is in process for me.
Yeah. Well, I would say Jesus didn't ask people to do really, really difficult, hard things, right? I mean, he goes to Zacchaeus and he says, "You need to return the money that you stole."
Yeah, he didn't say go to, Antarctica.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that doesn't take a revolution. I mean, so I think most of the things Jesus asks us to do are pretty, like on the grand scale of the things that you accomplish in your life or you do in your life, they're not super, super large. But I think really the question, like if we're going to ask, what does living out of the resurrection mean? That also means you have to ask, what does living out of the crucifixion? Because Jesus doesn't resurrect without dying. And so if I'm living out of the resurrection, what part of me needs to die? Like something's got to die. And that thing is going to be an idol in my life. And all those little things that I find frustrating are pointing to that deeper idol that Christ is saying, if you're going to live resurrected and have your identity in me, and you're going to have a new life in me, those things have to go. And those are the things we don't want to let go, or we don't even realize they're a problem yet. And so I would wonder if like I think Amy Carmichael probably worked too much.
Yeah.
I think that's probably an issue of hers.
Same with.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, it seems like most of like the big time famous missionaries and reformers, like, okay, you guys work an excessive amount. Whether that's right or wrong, I'm not even going to breach that. But it was constantly killing small idols. Like you have to kill the sin. And so when I think of like, hey, I can't be productive, the idol behind that is my value is I only have value if I'm doing stuff for Christ. If I'm not doing those things for Christ, then he doesn't love me. Well, that's a problem. So relaxing for me is like, that's a big idol I have to slay to lay on a couch.
Yeah, it's true. It's funny though, because sometimes the relaxing I should do, which is like to lay on the couch and just let my, enter into boredom and just let my mind wander and perhaps think of something that I could, that I'm deeply grateful for, or let a thought wander into my mind that's dark that I've been avoiding. That's what I don't do. I definitely waste time. It's just, I don't do it like that. I waste it on what I want to waste it on. Right. And it's interesting. I think if there's one theme I've really just turned over in my head throughout the years, it's that repentance doesn't look the same for everybody. And that following Jesus doesn't look the same for everybody, because just what you're saying, he's getting at the idols of my heart, and my idols aren't yours, and your idols aren't, anybody else's in our church. So the big question, is usually, what is that thing that you must have, right? And when I reflect on that Dorothy Day story, of course, I watched a movie, so did I get the whole story? Probably not. I have read a biography of her too, but there's probably something about her choosing the church over the stability this man might have offered. That probably was a repentance type choice for her.
Right.
But then at other times in her life, when she was consumed by her ministry, and probably neglecting her daughter and neglecting her coworkers, she was probably giving into the idol. And I think that's always the question to be asking is, it's, yeah, not everybody needs to be Amy Carmichael and go off to other nations and set, but some people do. And interestingly, and I've noticed this, the ones who want to do it so bad, I worry about sometimes. It's the ones who don't want to do it who sense the call.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't want to lay that down as a rule, but it's like sometimes the ones that want it, it's there's some other motive in there. There's some other driver. I want to do my own thing. If I'm out on the mission field, nobody can tell me what to do, or I want to do something great for the kingdom. I mean, maybe that's the idol Jesus would like to topple off of your shelf, is you getting to do something really great.
Yeah.
And I know I've shared with the church that I didn't want to be a pastor because I didn't want the responsibility to land on my shoulders. And interestingly, Jesus seems to have like pushed me into that exact place, because that idol of kind of playing it safe and not being able to be blamed, or it feels like Jesus has taken that idol and just gone like, sorry. But
Yeah.
that oddly meant giving me a leadership role.
Yeah. No, that is interesting. I'd wonder if I've met a lot of people in ministry who are in it because they're running from something.
Totally.
And I mean, that's even, I think, true probably in my own life, where like I couldn't find a church that I really liked. And a lot of that has authority issues, which I'm really finding is an issue, like a generational issue in my family. Who would have thought? From both sides, we're just killing it in rebellion. And so part of the motives of like me when I planted initially was I could do this better.
Yeah.
I can do this way better than you're doing it. So there's me running away from being under authority and me running into further arrogance, which, don't worry, Jesus has revealed many things to me about the stink that I create.
Well,
So, yeah.
the beautiful thing about it is, fortunately, God, in Christ doesn't give us what we deserve, because even though like we are talking about all these, I mean, these idols get exposed over time. And I mean, imagine if God waited for us to have been utterly, done with these idols before giving us any form of a ministry to anybody else. I mean, it just never would have happened.
Oh, yeah, there's no chance.
And so it's, I assume a lot of missionaries were called to the field who went out there for all the wrong reasons, and then God tore that down and taught them what, same thing. People have kids for all the wrong reasons. Gosh, man, that's the case. Like, people have kids for really the wrong reasons, because I'm going to be a greater father than my father ever was. Like, oh, please, like, good luck with that. Like, now your kid's going to get crushed under your goals. But we get into them for the wrong reasons, and then God chips away at those wrong reasons and exposes them, and is good to do that to us. I mean, it begs the question, I don't want to say that, because God's at work in my life during quarantine, that's the purpose of COVID-19. That would be super arrogant to say. But I think in every individual's life, in every situation that he puts us in, including this, he's at work. And so it's, my irritability that this quarantine is exposing. It ought to drive me to the cross. It ought to drive me to the resurrection and say, do I really believe this? Like, am I living in this? Like, do I love Jesus? Is that what I'm doing here?
Yeah, that's a question that we have to ask. One of the things that I heard John Piper say years ago, when I very first started listening to him, I actually I remember the moment when I discovered sermons were online.
You're
like, what? Yeah, it was a good day. But I remember one specific quote, and I think he just said it offhand, but he said, when God's doing one thing, he's doing a million things. And so I think a situation that we're in, like, God is doing a lot of different things in a lot of people's hearts. And yes, recognize what he's doing in yours, and then be excited about like how he's going to change you, but how he's going to sanctify all the people around you, and how he's working in all of their lives. Like I have no clue all the stuff that he's doing,
Right.
but I know that what he brings to light for me, I need to respond to.
Yeah. Well, that's probably enough for tonight. A little late night sesh with Andy and Nick, and so hey, that's kind of how we're processing through this week, and I hope that gets you thinking about what the resurrection actually means for you. I know I could speak for Nick and I both in saying we'd love to hear about it if you guys are processing through that, especially if you're within our church community. Just reach out, tell us about it. If you're not, you can get a hold of us in the info down below this video. But yeah, man, Nick, good to see you. Thanks for hanging in your garage with me.
Yeah.
And it's a sweet, sweet office, man.
Yeah, yeah. It's got some weird stuff in the background I'm noticing.
I
There's like
like it.
a shower, all,
Yeah.
and some hedge trimmers. It's good. It's a good office. I should say that we found a king snake in our yard 2 days ago and found him back again today. And
Okay.
so we named him Siegfried, and we're gonna keep him around.
Good. Those are the good guys. You should
Yeah,
keep.
I like those snakes. I
All
don't know why
right.
I should say that.
Me
Bye.
either.